Bring in Congressman Mike Turner in Washington. Really a pleasure to have you with us today in light of the two conversations. Wolf Blitzer was with us hearing the president speaking from the White House about the situation ongoing in Ukraine. And I know that you heard also from President Poroshenko as he was reacting to the situation on the ground there. So many voices that we're hearing, not only from the presidents of both nations, are putting a lot blame squarely on the shoulders of Vladimir Putin. President Obama being very clear in saying that he believes that his preference has always been that diplomacy is the way to go. I'm wondering if you think that is far enough or the president needs to take more action than that.
Well, you're right. These certainly are the strongest statements that we've heard from the president, firmly laying the blame on Vladimir Putin, both for what's occurring there, lack of access to the site, and the fact that a war zone has been opened up in Europe. But the president did say a diplomatic solution, but he went on to then say that the territorial integrity of Ukraine must be respected and that Russia must withdraw both its military operations and its support for the Russian separatists, which the president identified, many of which are Russian citizens. So even though the president's calling for a diplomatic solution, he is not talking about a diplomatic solution that includes the separatists that are Russian citizens or Russia itself.
The president said that international investigators need access immediately to the crash site here, which is also a crime scene. He said that Russian President Vladimir Putin now has the burden on him to make sure that these pro-Russian rebels allow this access. And the president says if Mr. Putin does not allow this access, the cost for the Russian behavior will continue to increase. My question to you, Congressman, are those costs high enough right now, and what should the additional costs on Russia be?
Well, again, I don't think they are strong enough, but the president has gone and made the strongest statement that he has about Putin's influence here, saying that the international community needs uninhibited access and that Vladimir Putin needs to do more than just make statements, recognizing that he believes that Putin is in control and in charge, and if Putin says that access will be granted, that it would be granted. The president also went on to say how important it is to have that access because, as you just indicated, this is a crime scene. People were murdered, and obviously the international community needs to hold those accountable, and you've certainly raised the issue as whether or not Russians were actually involved in the operation of these missiles. Another issue this points out is this is a difference between the international community and Russia with respect to human values, and we sort of see that both in the handling of this site, the support for a war zone in Europe, certainly all the way to supporting Syria and its killing of its own citizens.
We know, sir, that also the president has called for sanctions against Russia in the past when we've seen the situation escalate there in Crimea. We also know that European leaders have been more reticent. Do you think now, as we talk about the international community, we're going to see more unification in putting that pressure on Russia?
Absolutely. The international community has been awoken to the risks of Vladimir Putin taking Russia as an aggressor state into one of its neighboring countries, violating international treaties, as you indicated. I think what's interesting here is also the issue of, what is the toolbox that we have to put pressure upon Russia? Sanctions are certainly a dial that we can turn up, but the great interview that Christian did of President Poroshenko certainly indicated that NATO plays a role. There is opportunity to provide military support, intelligence, training, strategy, even equipment to the Ukraine. And also you have the issue of, how else can we assist them in looking to identify these separatists, as Poroshenko indicated, as terrorists.
You talked about the interview that Christian did with the president of Ukraine, Poroshenko. The president said that the pro-Russian rebels who he claims shot down MH Flight 17, he said they were supported, trained, and armed by the Russians themselves. He even suggested most of them are Russian citizens, to be sure. That's an exact quote from him right there. You are privy to certain intelligence, sir, in your status in Congress right now. Do you believe that the Russians and Vladimir Putin are directly responsible or even tangentially responsible for the shooting down of this aircraft?
Well, I have received classified briefings. I can't tell you, of course, what has occurred in those briefings, but I can tell you that I was very pleased at how strong the president's statements were of drawing not a dotted line, but a straight line to Vladimir Putin. It's very clear that if you give someone equipment and means and approve of their mission to basically kill someone, and they kill someone else, you're still as absolutely guilty of the killing as we see here in this instance. This is why this is a crime scene. I think Russia bears responsibility, and they are continuing that with not providing access to the site. It was very, I think, encouraging to hear the president strongly say, what are they trying to hide? I think that certainly is an issue that Vladimir Putin himself needs to answer.
Congressman Mike Turner, thanks so much for making time for us and sticking with us here on CNN to talk about this. Obviously, the situation is developing, ongoing, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to you again about it.